TV. You are watching The Elephant in the Room, and I am Jasmine Bowen. Today we are doing an episode on poverty nationally in Canada and internationally, tents versus shelter. But before we get to our great guest today, let me tell you about two contests we have going on. Two. That's right, Remake TV has gone above and beyond. The first contest is Refer Your Friends. Why not tell your friends about all the great stuff you're watching on Remake TV? You're watching now, and you probably just told someone on MSN, hey, I'm watching this great episode. Why not get paid to do it? Enter your friends' names, and you could win $500 a month. $500 a month for being our top referrer. And on top of that, at the end of our contest, the secret end, we will be giving away $10,000. $10,000 just for telling your friends about the great stuff on Remake TV. Now, you see this lovely Remake mug that I have? Well, one of these, not this one's mine, but one of these could be yours. All you have to do is go to the website, click on the Remake mug contest, and if you are the 88th person, that's right, lucky number 88, you get a Remake mug. And these are pretty big. They hold a lot of coffee for you morning people. So, enter this contest. Good luck, and we will get to our guests. So welcome, ladies. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
What we have Dupree and Stella from the Kachin community in Burma to talk about the international issues, and MAUREEN from St. Christopher House to talk about the national issues here in Toronto. So let's start on this end.
Sure.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your organization and what you do?
Sure. St. Christopher House is a neighborhood center, so we're a social service agency delivering to those people who need us at different times in their life. And then we're also a community center for everybody to come together.
Okay.
We work with seniors, we work with newcomers to Canada, we work with kids, we work with families, and we work with homeless people.
All right. So tell me a little bit about the situation in Toronto.
Well, I think a lot of people in downtown Toronto know that there's poverty. They see people on the street. I think other people, it's a bit more invisible to them.
Right.
And I think for many Canadians, it's really invisible what's going on in the north of Canada, where we have Aboriginal communities living in really terrible conditions and suffering from not only some deprivation, lack of money and resources and housing up there, but also winter. I mean, they've got really severe conditions to survive.
Canadian winter, for those of you who don't know, it is bad. It gets to minus 40 degrees Celsius.
Up there,
sometimes on a good day, minus 40. So it's bad.
Yeah.
Now, what's going on over here? So this is what's going on nationally, but what about you guys? What is happening overseas in Burma, in China?
In Burma, or today we're mainly talking about the northern part of Burma. And now because of the conflict, the civil war, it's been 10 months long, and as a result of a humanitarian crisis and human rights violation by the military governments, there has been over 75,000 internally displaced people without basic needs for survival.
Now, what kind of conditions are they living in there?
I would say the conditions in the Kachin state, throughout all Kachin states, are extremely terrible. And out of all these conditions, human health issues and food securities are the most concerned.
Okay.
There's 50,000 of ITP, internally displaced person, living in a temporary tents throughout the Kachin state.
They're living in tents.
Yeah, tents. It's just temporary. It's terrible conditions.
Okay.
And most of them are in a remote areas, and it's really hard to get really hard to receive any of the assistance and any help.
Okay.
And also health issue is one of the main concern for these people. Health issue. There's only one hospital in Liza where a couple of thousands of internally displaced people are being taken care for with a little, not enough with medical assistance.
Wait. So tents in the jungle, in the weather, and these are not sturdy tents either, like permanent tents. These are
terribly. Yeah, the tents are like, in terms of living condition, tents are extremely unsecure, and they build with poorly and with just plastic covers and bamboo poles. And under this extremely weather, and they get blown away by the strong wind, especially in a rainy season, they can just wash away. So
And there's no hospital. There's one hospital, but it's not very good.
yeah, it's not very good.
So this is quite a difference, I mean, between the two. I mean, Maureen, how can we really say there's poverty in Canada when we see this?
Well, and you know, that is terrible, terrible conditions, and Canadians should be very concerned about that too. We also do have people, though, in Canada living in pretty terrible conditions. As I said, in the north, I think it's some of the worst, but there's parts of Vancouver and Toronto where people are living on the streets, under bridges, having addictions or mental health issues that haven't been taken care of well, and they're at risk as well. So I think it's not a matter of dividing. You know, some people are worse off than others and deserve more. I think it's all of us, especially Canadians, when we have so much. We are a rich country. We need to be doing our best for all these folks.
Now, coming from, you guys both recently came from Burma. Coming from Burma, can you just think of something off the top of your head that Canadians have that you don't?
Yeah, the privilege of, you know, getting to vote and...
To vote?
Yeah, voting for election, you know, someone who will represent your needs and your future plans for yourself or your new generations. But on the other hand, in Burma, like all these 75,000 people or more people, like millions of people in Thai-Burma border, a lot of people sacrificing their family and losing their life just to get, you know, the right government, and standing up for that and losing their village, community, and people. So that is one thing that, you know, we come here and, you know, wow, this is, you know, the land of freedom.
We complain about
I was
going
going to say, doesn't it make you crazy that
Yeah.
Canadians don't vote when we have the, we
complain.
have people are risking their lives for it in other countries. It's shameful
Yeah.
here.
We complain that the polling station is 5 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
We complain like that it's not in our house.
Yeah, so that's one thing that, you know, we see it here and then we find it like, oh my God, you know, when are we going to have that one day back home? And, you know, we just appreciate it so much.
People are following the news now. There actually is a democratic election coming up in Burma. So I think the general public maybe thinks Burma is a democracy. So what's going on behind the scenes there?
Yeah, it's just a lot of people, you know, when they find out, oh, you're from Burma, congratulations for all this, you know,
you just got democracy.
improvement and democratic, you know, process and stuff. And I just say thank you. But, you know, at the same time, a lot of people or international communities are not aware of what's going on in the north, or mainly with the ethnic communities. I mean, that's the case with anywhere, right? In minority people or people of color or more vulnerable people. Like the same in Burma.
Right,
so,
with the ethnic community.
yeah, what we hear happening in Burma is from the cities where all the tourists can come and, you know, this beautiful decoration.
So it's kind of like a fake...
Not really. It's a good thing that, you know, things are changing. Like Suchi, the lady, is now, you know, really, like for the first time after 2 decades, like really trying to get out there. So it's a good thing. But at the same time, it's not like you can just trust what you see. It's, like people, a lot of media, you know, international news and coverage, they cannot come. They don't have access. They're not allowed to get in because we're from like really the northern Burma, where you have to go either like come from the south of Burma, which you need the special permit.
So there you can't get in. Now you mentioned, I want to touch on a point, the ethnic minorities, and we have a problem with ethnic minorities too. I mean, we don't have a problem with them, but they a little bit. You can tell me about that, because Toronto's very diverse, and we are like almost 75% minorities. So tell me what's going on there.
No, I think that it's really true that people of color are more marginalized often in our society. Racism is still alive and well, and it's just a lot more subtle here.
Right.
And in particular with employment. So that's where we really see people losing opportunities for employment, losing opportunities for housing because they are people of color. So Canada hasn't won this battle yet at all. And the people who are at the low end of our income scales tend to be people of color and newcomers to Canada increasingly.
So they might escape a situation like Burma, but it might not be much better here.
And it used to be people could come to Canada and the first generation would be poor, but they kind of could work their way out of poverty. And I don't want to talk about stats because I don't have them all at the top of my head, but it's absolutely been proven, at least in Toronto, Greater Toronto area, that the second and third generations of
Right.
newcomers aren't doing as well as their parents.
Okay.
They're actually, it's getting worse here for folks, and
Interesting.
that has to, I think, be about racism.
Why do you think it's racism?
I do. I think it is racism.
Even in, I mean, this modern age.
Yeah. Though they're not good. A lot of kids from racialized communities aren't getting through school,
Right.
and that starts the employment downward cycle. They're not getting the jobs. And
Right. Now, how do you guys feel hearing that? I mean, in Burma, like, they portray Canada as like the land of dreams. Everything happens. Everything's good here. But I mean, hearing this, and you came here, how does that feel?
Do you wanna say something?
Yeah.
I feel living in Canada is much, we have a hope, even like we don't have a job, even we go to school, we have support by the government. And in Burma, especially in the northern Burma, during the civil war, look at all these kids. They are out of school. All the schools in the Indian villages are occupied by the Burmese military, and they use as their post. And then schools are using as a post, and parents are running away from their homes, and parents have no school.
So at least there's hope,
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yes.
There's at least the
Yeah.
thread of hope.
Yeah.
Now, one of the
Yeah.
common misconceptions, especially in Canada, is there's all these government programs to help people. There's social assistance, the unemployment, the low-income housing. So why is there still poverty?
yeah, it's a great question. And Canada does have a sort of social safety net, but it's been getting more and more holes poked in it over the last number of years. And some of that is because there are sometimes people who abuse systems. And so
Okay.
there's more and more rules to catch those people. But that slows down or prevents access by other people. So right now, for example, Ontario Works, which is welfare in Ontario, has over 700 rules.
Wow.
And so it's a bureaucratic nightmare to try to
Right,
figure out
right,
how to
yeah.
get through that system. By honest people who really need a hand for a temporary period of time,
Okay.
they've got to go through absolutely unbelievable loops to get that. So on one hand, we understand no one wants to see our social safety net abused. On the other hand, when it becomes inaccessible,
Right.
what is it for? If it's
So there's just kind of a few that ruin it for
absolutely,
everybody.
absolutely.
And what kind of social government assistance is available in Burma?
I think there's no
There's nothing.
social
Nothing
policy for these housing
Okay.
or shelter as well. Even in northern Burma, look at this. All these people are hoping that they will receive any assistance from the international communities. Even a lot of parents become orphans
Right.
as a consequence of civil war, and they don't have hope. I don't know who's gonna take care of them for
Right.
future welfare system or any other. That policy that doesn't exist in Burma, especially for the elderly, is some of them are in a civil war and they have become disability. Who's gonna take care of them? Like so.
No, I
it's a
understand.
big difference.
International organizations like the Red Cross, like United Way, actually have trouble getting in
Yeah.
anywhere in Burma.
Yeah, I think the problem us being in the north is geographical disadvantage. Well, it's a beautiful part of the country, don't get me wrong, it's home.
Beauty is not all
But
there is.
yeah, but the thing is we're right next to China. So, for instance, the refugee camps in Thailand border, I mean, Thailand is, a democratic country, so people can come in and,
Right.
they get reports and anything. But for us, for international people, to come from Burma side, they need special, the permit from government, which the government is not going to give. And from China, China is not letting
China's
anyone
not
in.
the best place right now.
Exactly.
Either. Yeah.
So that's that's why it's geographical disadvantage. So but we know a lot of people, like some people from Canada, the news, the reporters from Australia, from Europe, they are risking their life and trying to get there and record them, document them, and it inspires us. It's not your cause, but you're there.
Yeah.
So it just
So I
it's
mean,
amazing.
now you two to each other. I mean, we have a country with no social assistance, and then over here we have a country who abuses its social assistance. I mean, it's almost like if we could swap just a little bit.
But we don't really abuse it. I mean, a couple
We
of
have
people abuse
people
it.
who
Couple of
abuse
people,
it, yeah.
couple. Really, truly, it's a small number of people, and there's a real danger of the public thinking it's it's so many people abusing
Right.
welfare. It's really not, and a
Right.
lot of people on welfare are only on it for a short period of time.
Okay.
and then they try to get a job.
Is there a time limit?
There's no time limit,
Okay.
but they are on it often for a short period of time. Then they get a job, like
Okay.
a contract job,
Right.
and then the contract ends,
Right.
and they're back on welfare because they didn't have enough hours to be eligible for employment insurance.
Right.
So we've got a lot of cracks in our system where people can fall through.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, what we say at Sacred River House is there's some reasons for poverty. One is people have bad luck, and
Okay.
for us, that's the biggest thing we see is unbelievable bad luck. And it's
Okay.
as simple as getting hurt on the job or getting sick or a disability. You know, then your
Yeah.
life really changes for the worse
Yes.
often. And then there's bad choices. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
people make the wrong choice. They have an abusive partner.
Right.
There's things that, they probably made the wrong choice. They weren't informed well enough, or they just got into a
Yeah.
bad situation. The third is a few bad apples who do ruin it for everybody.
Mhm.
And some of those are people who maybe have a mental illness that hasn't been diagnosed yet.
Mhm.
They're really difficult people. But there's really a handful of those. In all of our
Right.
years at St. Chris, there's a handful of those folks.
Right.
And then the fourth is sort of where the market isn't performing well, a kind of a bad market. So bad luck, bad choices, bad apples, and bad market,
Yeah.
where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, even in Canada. So I appreciate there's terrible things going on in other parts of the world, but Canada also really needs to take care
Absolutely.
of some stuff at home too.
Now, we looked at the causes. Okay, so what are the causes of homelessness and poverty in Burma?
I think in Burma mainly, here in Canada, like you were saying, a lot of all different reasons. But for me, as coming, from a third world country, of course in poverty there's a lot of deprivation and suffering anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's
Yes.
first world country in Canada, Africa, South America, in Burma. But in Burma, you can clearly see the single cause of this poverty and homelessness.
Which is
The government,
The
the military government not having, the government that represents or care about people. So as long as they're gonna, they can hold on to the power, they will do anything. So that's why a lot of people are suffering.
wow. So here we ask the government for help, and there it's not an option.
Yeah, and also another reason is, it's really unfortunate that just, to get the right government, people have to lose their life in villages. But on the other hand, we also see that as collective, fighting,
Yeah.
standing up against the, get rid of this bad government, so that we can have someone who can, who will lead the country,
Right.
the people into the right direction.
Right. So it is a fight, and once upon a time, Canada had to fight that fight too
Yeah.
to be independent, hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
But still.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me, Maureen, what somebody would do who is kind of in a homelessness situation, maybe to get out? What is kind of the protocol?
Well, there's some of it depends on what's going on in their particular circumstances. It's every individual comes with their own kind of package of things that have gone
Right.
on, their own history. But for many of the people who are homeless, they have a mental health issue
Okay.
or a mental illness, more severe mental illness, or an addiction.
Okay.
I think that's some of the most common causes of homelessness in Toronto,
Right.
and that's why we have good connections with the medical side of the infrastructure. The social safety net
Right.
has a health side of it, and that's working with people to make sure they're getting diagnosed, they're getting the proper supports, and treatment if they have an addiction.
Okay.
But there's a long waiting list for a lot of addiction treatment programs. It's very difficult.
Right.
And some of the urban Aboriginal people we work with are also facing real difficulties finding
Right.
appropriate addiction treatment programs. But that's probably some of the biggest help to get people
Okay.
back on their feet.
And what about just unemployment, finding a job? What kind of assistance is available?
There's a lot of work now being done to help people understand the range of jobs out there. I think a lot of people, even high school kids, I think in Canada, don't really have a sense of what they could do. We actually almost have too much choice in the labor
Right.
market. So people aren't getting specialized
Right.
and knowing what to go into for post-secondary education.
Right.
So some of that starts at home with people talking about work and the different kinds of things you can do. And then we have employment programs and social service agencies like ours that help people match their interests to their strengths and help them find jobs. And often contact supportive employers to say, look, we've got this guy with this
Right.
skill, can you use them? And that works out well often.
Cool.
Sometimes people
So,
just
there's
need
lot
a
of
little
help,
boost.
a little
Yeah.
push, yeah. And how do you get out of a tent in the jungle?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lots of camps. Most of them are in the remote area, and they can't really get out of this jungle because of fear of Burmese army and so many abuses and violence, and they can't really go back to their homes as well because their homes are being destroyed, farms are being burned down, the houses are being burned down, and I don't think they can go back home. And
okay,
even
so we talked about before, these soldiers are burning, beating, raping.
And then even in the jungle, they are fear of Burmese soldiers are hiding, especially in one of the town I just heard yesterday that there's about thousands of refugees hiding in one of the near one of the town called Shuigu, and then nobody can get there.
Okay.
So I don't know how they live there.
So there's no way out.
No way out there. So they are just stuck in there.
Do you guys think that if we had some of the social assistance from Canada into Burma, if there was help with addiction or mental illness or job finding, it would make a difference there, or is it a completely different situation?
Oh, I think to get all those, we still need the right kind of government. Then any kind of assistance or any form of, charity or anything, we need the right kind of government, and all these abuses and human rights violation have to be stopped.
Right.
Then, we can think about having these assistance and rehabilitation or, from international communities or even in the country.
There's a lot of people who, if they're made secure, they don't need any other help.
Right.
So women fleeing abusive situations in Canada, it's a small comparison, but then there's the people that you're talking about. They probably don't need a lot of help as long as they can be made safe again and go back to homes and villages where they were probably self-sustaining before. I don't know.
Yeah, very much so, because in Canada it's more like the service industry, and you really need companies to get a job and stuff. But on the other hand, in Burma, it's more like farming, and there are like the local businesses and stuff. So it's not, before it was not like, rich communities and villages, but still, they were doing okay. They had food to eat and stuff. Life is not the best with, having this, our government right now, the military government, but they were doing okay. Although it's not safe, and they're not like full, their belly is not.
It's not a level that Canada exists on.
Exactly, Now is the main problem is just they're not even having this basic, needs for survival. That's the main problem,
Maureen, do you think that in Canada we almost rely on too much, like in the sense that there's a lot of stuff we don't need. We talked about walking through the mall and like all these shops and buy. Do you think we've gotten used to a standard of living that we don't necessarily need?
Yeah, I think there's a legitimate critique of consumerism, in Western culture for sure. Really, it is a bit off to see what we've got and the disposable stuff and everything. But that also apparently drives our economy to a certain extent, so it probably has an upside to it. But I do think Canadians are increasingly sort of self-conscious about how much stuff we do have. And then when you hear stories like this, you just feel like, come on, we've got to be able to help out more.
But at the same time, I mean, we've been put in a certain mindset that if maybe a homeless Canadian was put in a standard of living that is happy in Burma, they would not be happy. They would think, I have nothing. I have to farm my crops every day. And can you take me through maybe a day in the life of somebody going through this system? And you guys are next, so think about that.
It's always tough because there's so many diverse people. But
so let's talk maybe homeless.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing, getting up and probably going over to one of the drop-in programs to get a shower.
Okay.
And go to the bathroom. We forget, but if you're homeless, you don't have a toilet.
That's true.
So toilet and shower and getting laundry done because there's often only one set of clothing. So they'll sit in our drop-in with a bathrobe on while their clothing is getting washed.
So laundry even.
Yeah, we go through pounds and pounds of laundry soap.
I would think so.
And because people have self-respect. I mean, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you don't want to take care of yourself.
Right.
So, and then they'll be part of, for example, our community kitchen. So we're not a food bank, we don't give out food, but people can use a little bit of whatever money they've got
Right.
to buy part of our bulk purchase of food, and they could cook their own food
Okay.
to their taste. You know, sometimes it's to their particular cultural food, or if they've got health issues like diabetic, they make their own food,
Okay.
and we can help them freeze it and keep it aside for them so they can
Ah.
come back and get it on a day where they feel they need it. And then they can participate in other activities in our drop-in, for example, a computer club, things like that, where they learn some, you know, now basic skills. I mean, it's just like the telephone used to be. The computer is now
Right.
an essential skill people have to
Right.
have, especially if they're
Absolutely.
looking for work.
Yes.
So computer club and other things. We have an odd jobs club for people who are ready to try snow shoveling in the winter or raking leaves in the fall, those kinds of things. So it's a variety of things that people can get involved in. A lot of their time is spent with their welfare worker, going through the rules and regs and the paperwork
Right.
and figuring out the mistake that was made and resulted in them not getting a check and going back and forth.
Right.
That takes a huge amount of time,
Wow.
especially for people with kids. So
Right.
there's not too many homeless with children on the streets, but they're living in motels and shelters. And with daycare subsidies and welfare and stuff, the paperwork drowning those families is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about the toilets. There's
Yeah.
definitely things that you don't think about. Now, nothing like that is available in Burma. Tell me about maybe a typical day in the life up in the mountains in a
You want
tent.
to go?
I would say the people living in the villages, probably they have a normal life, good life, as even if they are not first class people.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
good is different.
yeah, different.
Yes.
But because of the civil war, now they live in a tent and under the bad environment. It's terrible. And I think temporary toilets are not setting. Even the water system is not setting. So not having these clean water, these have become the major cause of the sickness among these IDPS people.
Right.
And another problem is not setting these toilet systems,
Right.
which is also the main cause for the sickness. So
Okay.
there's no volunteers and the shortage of medical supplies. All things make them very extreme condition.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
these are, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a difference. And yet,
Such difference.
at the same time, to say to someone living on the streets in Toronto, well, it could be worse. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say to them. So I think it's such a difference, especially with our standard and what we've decided is a good living situation. So you've taken us through a day in the life. Do the majority of these people get out of this situation?
Yeah, actually,
Really? Yeah.
we do see people moving into housing. It's important to know some of the housing is what I think you and I would consider completely unacceptable. Bed bugs in particular are just, you know, we really have a terrible problem with bed bugs in Toronto. And so people are living in tiny rooms.
Right.
They can't have anybody over.
Right.
They often are struggling to keep the bed bugs and cockroaches and stuff
Right.
away. And so they tend to go back to the street to socialize. They can't, you know, they could get very isolated in these very small rooms. So that's where we do our very best to make sure people keep their housing. They need a warm place to stay at night at least, and then try to connect them back to the rest of our culture or our society during the day through places like our drop-ins.
Now, how many, I guess, generations would you say it would take to go from your mother being homeless on the street to you having a fairly decent standard of living?
Oh, I think it can happen to the mother on the street. The mother
Oh,
can get housed.
okay.
I mean, I think we need to be hopeful that we can turn this around, and we see progress. We see some progress, especially for families with kids in poverty, because the governments of Canada and Ontario have got a child tax benefit. I won't
Right.
go into the details of
Right.
it, but it's actually lifted a lot of families with kids out of poverty.
Okay, so I guess how long? Years, months, weeks?
Well, I think it can be years. It can be a couple of years. Sometimes if a woman with kids gets a job and appropriate daycare, that she's it could be a matter of a couple of weeks.
Right.
So.
And what about over in the mountains? How long do you think it would take to get out of that situation?
The idea
Or ever?
is- Oh,
We can't say.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, from the latest news that we have heard is that it's the getting the IDP back to their original villages is almost impossible because they were like, the villages were completely destroyed, and so instead of doing that, they're trying to like do the resettlement, building new communities nearby and start all over again. But the war has to be over first. Yeah.
So essentially the government has to be completely redone, and until that happens, do you think that the people living in these mountains, in these tents, would be happy with what Canadians consider an unacceptable standard of living? Like going from the tent to, you mentioned like a small cruddy apartment with cockroaches and a minimum wage job.
It's really hard to do the evaluation because here people, I think in whatever society you're in, it's the hardest when you have somebody to compare yourself to.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I don't underestimate the, sufferings and deprivation of the people in this society because I mean, it's first world country. Canada is one of the best country in the world with the highest, living standard. But when you have someone, you can compare to, like you were saying, the gap.
But I think, at least we're safe here. I mean, that's I think the huge difference is your people are living in fear of their lives.
Exactly.
There's disease starting to happen. So we don't have that level of danger. It's still not. It's not good, some of the conditions people are living in, but people are not losing their lives like this.
Yeah, like for instance, people, the IDPs, Kachin IDPs, who fled into the Burma Chinese border, they were like arrested and detained by the Chinese authorities. Because it's like illegal, to get into, but they had to flee into it because it was, maybe the closest they could run into.
So even being arrested and detained is better than being captured by the soldiers.
So there in order to get out of the, the Chinese prison, again, you have to pay them. It's almost like on the bail, but then you don't have money. So,
I mean, it's such a difference, and we are so blessed to have such a good standard of living. What can be done to help in Toronto?
Well, there's organizations like the United Way that help fundraise for social service agencies, and also, so we can do stuff on the ground to help individuals. But I think organizations like St. Christopher House and the United Way also work on systemic issues so that we fix these cracks that people are falling through. Because frankly, we don't want to see St. Christopher House needed, for another 100 years. It would be much better if we just fixed the system.
And I think there's a problem with our government too?
It's not just our particular government at this point in time. It's our government. It's the way our system has been set up. And these rules and the amount of infrastructure that still isn't coordinated and allows people to fall through. And
do you think that there's a common misconception that people think they're helping and they're not?
Well, I think a lot of people are trying to help in their own ways. Huge numbers of volunteers. I mean, I think that's a really cool thing about Canada that you don't see in a lot of the rest of the world is the amount of volunteering that goes on and the amount of people that donate some of their money all the time to good causes. And I think that's really special.
Is there something that people shouldn't do that they think is useful and it's not actually that useful?
Yeah, that's a good question because you worry about dependency. So there is a role for places like food banks right now, unfortunately. But instead of setting up more food banks and charities like that, I think it's important to look at the advocacy that's needed for systemic change.
So now in Burma, what can be done to help? What can we do as Canadians?
I think the mainly is to get the news out. Yeah, because the sufferings of this, life-threatening situation of 75,000 people is almost as if it's not existent or it's not happening because the world doesn't know it, It doesn't get out of the country because no media can come in and stuff. So that has to be get out and people, raising awareness and stuff. And then also, mainly, we need help with the, the basic needs, food and medical aid. And we have a fundraising event coming up.
So tell me about this fundraising event.
Yeah, we are hosting a fundraising event on the next month, April 21st. We know that we can't have a lot, but we can make a little difference for their business needs, just for maybe a few weeks. But we try to promote these fundraisings. but we need a lot of help and system from the community in Toronto
So
as well.
it's a concert on
Yeah,
the
it's a
21st,
concert,
and
yeah.
where and when?
It is located in the 427 Law Street.
Okay.
And it's in the United Church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by the help of Burmese community, and you know that we have a few Kachin community, around 30 to 40 people. So we are trying to host these concert to be happen, just to raise some money for these IDP people in northern Burma. Yeah.
Cool, and tickets can be bought at the door?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we talked about what not to do in Canada. There is a common misconception. People think that donating to the Burmese government will assist people.
It's not really, because the all the charity and fundraising or any donation are not going through the the Burmese government right now, because we have the what do you call it, for instance, RENIA, the charity groups. It's the Refugee Action Network for IDP and refugee. I think RANIR.
Okay.
But yeah, so they're based in one of the largest refugee camps in northern Burma, and you can Google, their validity and credibility. They're set up there, and they're taking care of this almost about 30,000 people, and while the other camp, it's called WPN, is all taking the funds, donation directly, and they're all like the branches of one of the UN offices, like the Red Connection.
Right.
So you just, I have never heard of it, and I don't know if, I can trust them, but you can like Google it and check their, are they just, local trying to make money out of it? Or
The point is, don't donate to the government.
no,
That's not going to go to the people.
No.
Before we close, is there anything you ladies wanted to add? Any last points that you had?
Do you want to go ahead?
Well, I think it's interesting to bring us together, because I mean, I think we're all in the work with the mission of making people's lives better, and clearly what motivates me in my work and the people I work with at St. Christopher House is the same kind of motivation that would want to help you, and I think other Canadians hearing your story would want to help you as well.
Yeah,
And I think in terms of this poverty and suffering, like from in Canada or in Burma or anywhere in the world, any kind of sufferings, human suffering is very unfortunate and unacceptable. So if we have the power to do it, just, do whatever you can. And it's going to add extra values to your life, and, and it's going to help people live.
Yes. There's a very famous quote by Aung San Suu Kyi, which is just simply use your democracy to fight for ours. And that definitely applies to you guys, but it also applies to Canada, because there are people on the streets who don't have voices. There's no one to represent them. There's no one to, whisper in a boss's ear to give them the job. So I definitely think if we have a voice like all of you have, it's great that you're using it. So thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
for
you
being
for
on the
having
show.
us.
It was
Thank you
very
so much.
good.
Thank you.
Don't forget, before we leave, to enter our 2 contests. First of all, get paid to tell your friends about Remake TV, $500 a month. And on top of that, if you are lucky 88 to enter our draw, lucky number 88, you get this awesome 20-ounce Remake mug. And I love mine. I'm sure you're going to love yours. So enter our contest. And for now, I will see you next time on Remake TV. I'm Jasmine Bowen, and you've been watching The Elephant in the Room. Have a great day, and use your democracy, use your voice to fight for people who don't. See you soon.